All right, y'all, I'm so excited to get to sit down with one of my favorite authors and speakers and Bible teachers and all the things, Patsy Clairmont. Patsy, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Christy. It's nice to be in the neighborhood.
I know. You were just here speaking for our devotional, but you are such a friend of our company, of mine. We have all learned from you from the years you've spoken at Business Boutique. Like, you are just such a part of this community, but I would love it, just as we kind of kick it off, for anybody that's not familiar with what you do, tell us a little bit about kind of your story.
Well, I talk a lot.
Yeah, hey, me and you, we have that in common. Yeah.
I have been speaking for many years. I was one of the founding speakers for Women of Faith, which was a long run, 20 years, and was a great joy as we went around the nation doing the largest women's conferences at that time that had ever been put on in arenas. And the arena was a big deal for me because it was a huge room with a lot of people, and those were two things that innately I was very afraid of. So it ended up being an opportunity for me to make steps into a new dimension. And I would say that that's one of the things that's been invaluable in my personal development and growth, is being put in a position of having to grow. Because there's something so exciting about seeing progress in a life.
Yeah. And it's hard, though.
Oh,
and you're the first to talk about this. So you have some of the best stories, and you're such a great storyteller, and you're very open, I feel like, about your fears. Like, you have just lots of examples of stories of, like, you know, when God put you in a situation that was an opportunity, as an example, and you weren't real excited about it in the moment. And I think a lot of people feel that. I certainly have felt like that when you're in it. It feels like, you know, you want to protect yourself, insulate yourself. It's uncomfortable. It's outside your comfort zone, whatever. There was a specific story that you told recently when you were here for our devotional, and you talk about this, all of your friends. I love how you said your friends are fixers. You'd come up with a problem. You're like, oh, we've got a solution for that. And they rope you into this trip, and you talk about this little girl skipping. Would you share that story for us? Because I think there's such a powerful lesson of what you observed in that moment. And I want to kind of unpack it from there, but I'd love it if you'd share that story.
Well, when I was invited to go on the trip, it did not appeal to me. If you say the word trip, I'll say, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because what I've found is my fear dresses up in really rational excuses.
Sure.
So I don't always recognize that fear is at the base of my choices.
You got a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I do. And so going over to Israel, while it was a great opportunity and truly a privilege, and I was with friends, so, I mean, how could it get any better than that? And one of the best Bible teachers in the country, Chuck Swindoll. Yeah. So all of that looked extremely appealing, except for the reservation inside of me that I didn't know what I would be exposed to and have to face. Right. So, to my great surprise, we went to Masada, which I did not know had to do with a mountaintop. Now, they don't call it a mountain, they call it a hill. Uh-huh. I'm not even 5 feet tall. That was a mountain, let me tell you. And to get to the top of it, where all the history had been lived out, and to see the views, you had to go up in a tram thing, a car. It was a car dangling from a thread that was full of windows. That's what it was. And I looked at that, and I thought there must be a stairway.
Sure.
You can have a choice.
Another option.
Which one. Yeah, wasn't there. So, they announced, now hold on to your ticket, because if you don't have it when you get on the tram, you will be asked to step off. And I thought, way of escape. So I accidentally, lo and behold,
very accidentally,
lost the ticket.
Yeah.
And so my friends, not willing to accept that, when the lady said, well, you can't get on without the ticket. And I said, it's okay. Let my friends go ahead. I'll wait
I'll
here.
sit back, sure.
Yeah, I'll be the anchor. And my one friend, Jan, hurried off the tram, retraced my steps into the restroom where she and I had gone, and looked around and found my missing ticket. I did not do a good job of getting rid of that. Yeah. And brought it back. And then my friend Lucy beckoned me. Come on, Patsy, come over here by me. Well, she was up against one of the windows. Yeah. But I made a choice at that moment that I could not let my fears dominate. Now, I wasn't comfortable and I didn't feel brave because bravery is not an emotion, it's a decision. So weak-kneed and wobbly, and didn't want my friends to see me acting like...
Sure. Yeah.
I got on and got to the top, and everybody applauded me. Way to go, you did it. I know that was hard for you, but now we're here. And they all took off. Now,
As if that was the only challenge in this whole scenario. Yeah.
But there was still this wobbly pathway right next to the drop off before you got to the tippy top. And me getting from the tram to the tippy top was like asking me to try tight roping.
Right.
You know? So I was against the mountainside, wiggling my way up.
Trying to suction yourself to the side of the mountain.
Yes. When I got a glimpse and I couldn't move. I could not move anything. That's what fear will do to you. Try to prevent you from taking the next step. And there I was, glued to the mountainside when the tram came back up with a whole passel of people. And in the group of those people was a little girl. I would say she might have been 7. And she started skipping up the pathway I was stuck on, passed right by me. I could have touched her if I'd put my hand out, and skipped right onto the mountaintop. And in that moment, I thought, I was made to skip. I used to skip. Skipping was fun. And it took you to happy places.
Yeah.
Patsy, you were made to skip. Don't stay stuck. You've got a choice.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't skip.
Yeah.
But I moved.
That's right.
I moved, and I even separated myself at least an inch away from the hillside and made it up. And when I stepped onto that mountaintop, the view was like something I'd never seen before. It took my breath away. And I was so grateful. It was like I had just seen the glory of the Lord, on this mountaintop. Yeah. It was splendor. And I'm so grateful that I chose to be a child in the sense of trust.
Yeah. It's amazing. I love the observation you had. When you tell the story, it stuck out to me because I thought, for you, it's on a mountaintop and it's a little girl that's skipping. But for all of us, we have these situations where maybe a degree at a time, maybe a little bit at a time over life, we stop skipping in your example. We just get hard. We stop getting our hopes up. We stop pushing ourselves outside our comfort zone. We avoid things that are unpredictable or irrational or impractical, and we have all these excuses. We have all these reasons, kind of like you said. You said I had a lot of reasons, that I justified it. And I think that one of the things that I've wrestled with in the last year is this uncomfortable in between, where God is saying in His Word, "I'm the God of hope. I can do anything. I can move mountains. I can make the impossible possible. With faith as small as a mustard seed, I can do anything." And at the same time, I have all of my friends, and I felt this in my own heart of going like, well, I don't want to get my hopes up because He might not. And I don't want to dream big because He might not. And I don't want to be disappointed. I don't want to be let down. I need to guard my heart. Sounds so Christian. I got to guard my heart. And there's this in between of here on this earth, we won't get everything that we want, and we know it won't always turn out perfectly, but God's still saying, will you still trust me? Will you still walk up the mountain? Will you still step outside your comfort zone? Will you still hold your dreams and hopes with open hands? And so for you, what does that look like of continually bringing yourself back to a place, even when your fears creep up, of hoping again, dreaming again, skipping or walking again? Like it's a daily thing. It's not like you just did that once and now you're just skipping up every mountaintop. It's almost like we have to continually retrain ourselves to hope again. So what does it look like for you as you're pushing past your fears, kind of on a regular basis? It's not a one and done thing. You're always we all are having to do that.
We all do. Some of us are more prone to fearfulness than others. Know what you're prone to. Don't be afraid to own it, because in owning it, you can learn the principles from God's word of how to defeat it, how to grow in your faith. Don't be afraid of disappointment. Disappointment is loaded. It's just full of information that trains us for the next choice we make. Wow. Disappointment doesn't say that that now we're going to have to go in a side room and pout for a week because it didn't turn out the way we wanted. Disappointment says, here, learn this from what you've just been through, because it will make you wiser in what you're about to face.
That's good.
And so taking some of the emotions and the experience of the emotion and reevaluating it according to how God is able to do the impossible with the daily. Yeah. And I remember reading a line years ago in a Chuck Swindoll book where he said that the problem with life is it's so daily. Yeah. And isn't that so the truth? You face one problem, you have a victory, and the next day there's another problem. Well, hello, problems.
Yeah.
But God informed us we would have problems. He said, in this life, you will have trouble. You will have trouble right here in Franklin City.
Yeah.
You're going to have trouble.
Yeah.
And so know what to do with your troubles.
Yeah.
Know that it doesn't have to be the big enemy. It can be a trainer in how to apply the principles that God has given us.
I love that. I love how you said the idea of disappointment. There's lessons in that. And I think it's funny, too, because we do fear disappointment.
Yes.
And so we try to protect ourselves against it. But at least in my own life, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think maybe other people feel like this. I try to convince myself that I don't care about the thing. And it's like, I actually still care the same amount. I am not admitting it to myself. So when and if a disappointment comes, I'm the same exact level of disappointed as I would have been if I just owned it. Like, I really want this thing, or I don't really care. Because I do care. It's like we try to convince ourselves that we don't care about these things, but the desires of our heart, we can't fool. We can't fool God, and we can't fool our heart, because we want whatever that thing is, whatever you're hoping for, praying for, trying for. And so I love how you say, like, don't fear the disappointment. Own what you want. In the disappointment, there will be a lesson if it comes. Now, you said something a second ago I want to circle back to.
Okay.
You talked about bravery as a choice. Bravery is an action. I think a lot of people think of bravery, courage. They think of this as a feeling, and I'm going to wait until I'm not scared, and then I will do it. I will start the business when I'm ready. I will do that thing once I'm confident. And we're all waiting around for this feeling, this confidence fairy to just land on us. And I love how you talk about this idea of action. Like, you take action, you make choices, and you have examples. One of your favorite examples, I'd love it if you would talk about, is the idea of making your bed. Something as simple as this choice, but it's almost like pushing over the domino. So talk a little bit about how you live that out.
Yeah, well, one of the things I did not mention was that I ended up an agoraphobic, which meant I was physically and emotionally housebound. And eventually, after being housebound, I became bedbound. I didn't want to even get out of the bed. And one day, it was like the veil of my circumstances came up. My denial system went down low enough that reality could be seen. And I realized I had withdrawn from society. And now I had withdrawn into my bedroom, which meant there were a lot of things not being cared for my family that I was supposed to be a part of. And so at that point, I cried out at a level of relinquishment, giving up my right and turning and asking him for the help that was obvious I needed. And see, I'd been telling him what to do.
Sure, we all do that, yeah.
Fix me in the night. If you loved me, you'd fix me in the night while I'm sleeping.
Right, take this away from me, yeah.
But what I learned was he loved me enough. He was going to grow me into a stronger person. And that would be done through a series of choices that I was not making at that time. So I said, Lord, I'll do whatever you ask of me. And I heard this voice. I didn't know he was going to answer.
Wasn't prepared for that.
I heard this voice inside of me that said, make your bed. And I thought, well, that's not what I expected. It is not what I want. That's not it. Lord, see, I want to do great things for you.
Yeah.
And then I heard, make your bed. And I said, I'm in it. You know, it's real hard to make a bed when you're in it. And I had at that point to make a choice. Was I going to do what I said I would do, which was whatever he asked of me? But see, I thought I had to do something big. But how could I do something big when I wasn't even doing something small?
Wow.
And I found if you want to get to big, start small and build, because then your hope has a place to grow. But if you set it so far off your goal that you know in your mind you cannot attain it, you will not feel the impetus or the energy to get done what will need to be done. So I got out of bed and I stood there looking at it and I said, do I have to make both sides? Because I only slept on this side and you know who, shouldn't he make that side? And what I heard again was make the bed. So I made the bed, both sides, and there was a feeling for just a moment, a shred of dignity that came back. And what I would learn later was when you do what you're supposed to do, you begin to feel better about yourself. And I also learned the principle, when you're faithful in little things, then I'll give you more. When you're faithful in more, then I'm going to give you much. But I wanted to go from minus 22 to muchness.
Right.
And he said, no, we're going to grow you because you won't have the grace when you get there to know what to do with that.
Right.
If you don't start here.
Right.
And put in the diligence and the work. For me, it was a brave step to get out of the bed because it had become my refuge. Mm-hmm. And the Lord said, I want to be your refuge and your hiding place. So I had to begin to have a changed mind. And you do that because God's designed us with a will. I love that. And he does a work in us so that as our will strengthens, our information is there. We get to draw from his holy resources, which are unending. And he puts within us gifts. And when we function in the gift, we begin to learn our purpose. And when we function in our purpose, there is great joy at each morning when the sun comes up that you get to live out what you were made to do. And it is not that we don't get off track along the way, because we have to keep checking in for orders from headquarters, because otherwise our heart can get hard from dealing with people. You know, Christy, there's people out there. And they can really get to you.
Sure.
Unless your resource of love is drawn from a source beyond your own capability. Yeah. And as long as we are left to ourselves, we get into trouble. But as we have the guidance and the power of God's Holy Spirit to lead and guide us into that truth, that's where things get exciting.
Yeah. Patsy, I could literally listen to you talk all day. I'm sitting here hanging on every word, and you have said so many things that I want to even go back after this and listen to myself and write down. You talked about being faithful in the small things. You talked about obedience, and I want to ask about that. There's so many rich lessons, just even as you tell a story. Like, it's just amazing, the wealth of knowledge and insight. I want to go back to something you said a second ago about making the bed. I want to go back to that because I think that a lot of times, as believers, we want God to direct us. We want him to answer our prayers. We want him to take it away, whatever the thing is. But we say, God help me. And then God answers, but it's not the answer we wanted. And you didn't get the answer you wanted. No. Making your bed was not the answer you were looking for or even wanted. It's not even one I would imagine you liked. You're like, no, that's not what I had in mind. Kind of like you talked about, you wanted to go to much and that type of thing. So I've been kind of trying to study this idea of obedience. And I think that is such a powerful idea in Scripture and in this faith walk on the earth. You seem to be, whether you go kicking and screaming or not, you seem to be very obedient. Like when God prompts you, you may not like it. You may argue, in the example, in some of the stories I've heard you tell before, and they're always funny and fun, you joke about how you argue with God, but you eventually obey. And because you obey, you experience the blessing. And I think that it's very tempting when you get an answer to prayer or God, a nudging in your spirit to do something, when it's not the answer you wanted or the instruction you expected, or maybe it doesn't make practical sense. God has asked me to do things before that make no sense, Patsy. Right. And I'm arguing with him, that this doesn't make any sense, and I'm trying to rationalize with him, and he's like, my version of make the bed, whatever the thing is. When I do it, I experience such breakthrough, blessing, like such reward most of the time. Not like you always see why it happens. Sometimes you just have to trust, he knows what he's doing. But how would you encourage somebody that struggles with obeying? That goes like, is it really God? What if it's just me? What if it's the wrong thing? What if it doesn't make sense? How would you encourage someone to take steps of obedience? Because I think it's so powerful, and you seem to have really lived that out,
Well, I'm still learning how to live things out. No one gets it all right or gets it all together. I went out and checked. The most well-known people out there still don't have it all together. Jesus has it all together. And we are always going to be disappointed if we put our hopes in others. But our hope won't grow if we don't take steps. And growth can begin to work against us if we sit in the same spot and we aren't willing to do the next step. So does that take courage? Does that take bravery? It takes a decision. Lord, this is what I think you're saying to me, and it doesn't go against any of your other counsel. Therefore, I know it's in the realm of acceptability to your heart. I'm reluctant because I don't know if I'm capable, but I know you are capable. So if I risk this and it isn't going to work out, it doesn't necessarily mean that still wasn't his desire for us. For in the place that we don't succeed, again, is our education. And it teaches us what we want to do, what we'll never do unless God makes it really obvious to us. So it's so layered in possibility. If you feel God has asked you to do something that goes directly against his counsel, I would say jump back and reconsider, and then seek out wise counselors, because it is in many voices often that he will confirm the truth. Even 2 or 3, when they're touching and agreeing on earth, have great influence, and we need to listen up. So when I begin to hear the same thing again and again that I feel is the voice of the Lord in my life, I pay attention. Yeah. And when you talk about this resistance, I I was given a little puppy. And I realized after a short time why it was given to me.
And you thought about giving it to someone else.
I thought of giving it to many people. But I fell in love with this little ornery puppy girl. And she was rebellious. She was resistant. She did not learn quickly or well. And I thought, this
You and me? Okay.
puppy is impossible. And then it was so clear. No, this puppy is a mirror, honey.
Yeah.
This is how you are often to the voice of the Lord. You're resistant. You start pouting. You growl. You go through all these little rhythms that don't make music.
Yeah.
It's a cacophony.
Yeah.
And so I have learned a lot from this little puppy. And my vet said to me a year later, when you brought this little dog in, I said to my people when you left, there's no hope for that animal. And he said, no, this is really a sweet little dog. I said, love changes things. Love changes things. And that's my bottom line of knowing, am I supposed to do this or not? Does this promote love? Not, do I have a driving desire to say what's on my mind?
Right.
But is this promoting the love and the light of Christ? And that often helps me distinguish the choices that I make. Not as it comfortable, because his ways are, they don't make sense, like you said. His word says, my ways aren't your ways. My ways are so much higher than your ways that you're never going to be able to reason him out.
Yeah.
He isn't reasonable. He's God, and he's sovereign. And the sovereignty of God means he can do anything he wants to do, anytime he wants to do it, any way he wants to do it to accomplish what he wants to accomplish. So in some of the things we take a risky step in, we might learn a little humility.
Yeah.
We might grow in grace, in kindness, in love.
Yeah.
But love is always God's bottom line.
It's so good. I love how you said, even in the disappointments, you're learning something there, and God is in that. We think like, oh, if I'm disappointed, God must not be in it. Like he's only in this perfect path to success. And God's like, oh no, I'm way more interested in who you're becoming than where you're going. And we're so fixated on where we're going and what we're doing. And Patsy, it's just amazing. I love your faith. I love your wisdom. And I love your perspective too. Helps us, it helps me reset and refocus on how God wants to not only have a relationship with us, but work in and through us in the day-to-day, in the rhythms, in the disappointments, the thing that we feel like, oh, if we could just sidestep this or avoid this. And it's like seeing God is in that, and he is in that, and he is in that, and he is in making your bed, and he is in the big things and the small things and everything in between. And so thank you for that reminder.
My delight. I think that's one of the things that I have loved so much about God. The surprising thing is he's in everything.
That's so good.
He is in everything.
As we've been talking too about the future, and we're talking about, getting your hopes up in this idea of what God has to say about your future, even as you were talking and you were using the example of your cute little feisty dog, I just thought about, God has taught me so much about himself through my kids. And the verse that comes to mind again and again of if you know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more does your Heavenly Father want to give good gifts to you? And I think, we fear God sometimes, like, oh, it's just, he's going to set us up to pull the rug out from under us. It's like, no, God is a good God. Yeah, he's a good God that promotes love and wants to give good gifts to his children. And so because of that, and I love what you said too, because our hope is in him, not in our circumstances anyway, we can have all the hope in the world. Patsy, I could talk to you forever. Thanks for being here. Thanks for just sharing encouragement with us, for anybody that wants to connect with you and just see what all you're getting into, because I know you've got lots of fun stories and fun things. Will you tell them where they can connect with you?
PatsyClairmont.com is the best way to get all the news. I'm part of a podcast now with Andrew Greer.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Called Bridges.
Okay.
So I'd love for people to go there and subscribe.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know that. That's awesome news. I'm definitely going to listen to that. Well, Patsy, thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing your heart with us today.
Thanks.